Hey everyone. So if you've tried to fly anywhere in India recently, you probably know the feeling. Just absolute chaos. Today, we're going to unpack the massive flight disruptions that left thousands of people stranded and try to answer one pretty simple question.
Right? It's the question on every traveler's mind. What on earth is going on? We've all seen the pictures. Frustrated passengers, departure boards just glowing red with cancellations. But what's the real story behind this travel meltdown?
So first, let's just be super clear. This wasn't just a few random incidents here and there. Nope. We are talking about a massive, system-wide disruption that felt like it just exploded overnight, grounding some of the country's biggest airlines.
And the root cause? Well, it's probably not what you'd expect. It wasn't bad weather, it wasn't a computer glitch. This whole situation was kicked off by a sweeping new set of safety rules for pilots that became official on November 1st.
Okay, so to really understand the chaos, we have to look at the rules that caused it. And listen, these aren't just minor tweaks. We're talking about a fundamental shift in how pilot work and rest are managed in India.
At the heart of all this is something called FDTL. That stands for Flight Duty Time Limitations. Basically, you can think of it as the official rulebook designed to prevent pilot fatigue. And as we all know, a tired pilot is a huge risk factor in aviation.
And here's one of the biggest changes. The mandatory weekly rest for pilots jumped from 36 hours all the way up to a full 48 consecutive hours. I mean, that's a 33% increase. And just like that, airlines had way less flexibility for scheduling their crews.
Then you've got the night flights. This one is a huge deal. The number of landings a pilot is allowed to do between midnight and 6 a.m. was slashed from 6 down to just 2. You can imagine, for airlines that rely on those red-eye flights, this was a massive blow.
And on top of that, pilots are now capped at 2 consecutive nights on duty. There are stricter limits on their total flight time during night ops, and airlines now have to submit regular reports on how they're managing fatigue risk. The message is pretty clear. They're cracking down on the dangers of flying tired.
But here's the thing. These well-intentioned safety rules, they ended up exposing a critical and pretty fragile weakness in the business model of some of India's biggest airlines.
And that's the key question, isn't it? I mean, if these rules are designed to make flying safer for all of us, why did they end up causing such a nightmare for passengers? Well, the answer is all in the business model. You see, a lot of the low-cost airlines built their success on this super efficient, super lean operating model. It's a model that's all about packing the schedule with late-night flights, getting the absolute most work out of every single pilot, and keeping a bare minimum number of backup pilots on standby.
So what you had was a perfect storm. These new FDTL rules, especially the ones about night flights and more rest, went completely against that lean business model. All of a sudden, airlines just didn't have enough pilots available to legally fly the schedules that already sold tickets for.
So this naturally brings up a bigger question. Are India's new rules just completely out there? You know, how do they compare to the standards in other big aviation markets like the US and Europe?
Well, at a glance, you can see that while Europe is often seen as being the most advanced scientifically, India's regulators have now put themselves firmly in the stricter category, with a really sharp focus on hard limits for night duty and longer rest periods. And the difference is even more stark when you dig into the specifics. Look at weekly rest. India now demands 48 hours, compared to just 30 in the US and 36 in Europe. And for night operations, India has these hard caps where other places have more flexible systems. It's a totally different approach.
So, the takeaway is pretty clear. By putting in these very specific limits, especially around flying at night, India has taken a really aggressive, and you could even say a world-leading stance on fighting pilot fatigue.
So what happens when these tough new safety rules meet the cold, hard reality of flight schedules? Well, the system basically hit a breaking point, and it revealed this fundamental dilemma at the very heart of modern flying. Faced with a huge public outcry and just massive disruptions, the regulator, the DGCA, actually had to walk back some of its own rules. They gave temporary exemptions to some airlines, pretty much hitting the pause button on the strictest parts of the new regulations just to get planes back in the air.
But it's really important to understand that these strict rules weren't created in a vacuum. They were designed to tackle the very unique challenges of the Indian aviation market, which has tons of red-eye flights, and pilots often get pretty bad rest at smaller airports between really quick turnaround flights.
And, you know, at the end of the day, this whole episode really just exposes the core tension in the airline industry. It's this constant push and pull between making flying safer on one hand and the business pressure to keep flights frequent, reliable, and on time on the other. And that really leaves us with this one final lingering question. Can safety and schedules ever truly perfectly align, or will they always be in conflict? It's something for regulators, airlines, and, well, all of us as passengers to think about the next time we book a flight. Thanks for tuning in.